It started with the crunch of rubber grinding against gravel, followed by a piercing screech and a blaring horn. Moments later, a Range Rover tore down my private driveway like it was a highway. The driver, a teenager in a varsity jacket, glared at me as if I were the intruder. He didn't slow down, just whipped past my garage, swerved around my dog, and sped out through a makeshift gate I sure as hell didn't put there. 30 seconds later, another car followed. Then another. In an instant, my quiet, dead-end driveway in private land I'd paid a fortune for had turned into the neighborhood's new shortcut. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a fluke. It was an invasion, and they weren't done yet. 3 days earlier, everything had been peaceful. My wife and I picked this corner lot for its long, winding driveway, a perfect buffer from the noisy main road. I'm an industrial engineer who works from home, and tranquility is my lifeline. But that week, I started noticing extra tire marks near my hedges. At first, I chalked it up to the mail carrier turning around, or maybe the kid next door practicing his driving. No biggie. Then, on the third day, I spotted a paper sign nailed to a stake by my lawn. It read, Community Flow Access, Temporary Routing Approved by HOA. I'm not none of you seen how HOA folks operate, bickering over mailbox colors for hours, but I never imagined they'd reroute traffic through my private property. Still, I figured it might be a mix-up. I grabbed the sign, marched to the HOA office in a repurposed model home, and asked to speak to the person in charge. That's when I met Linda. Yes, her real name. And yes, she fit the stereotype. Linda stood like she'd never been wrong a day in her life, her voice smooth as a luxury car until you crossed her. Then it turned into biting sarcasm. She flashed a smile like I was a confused kid and said, "Oh, yes, we needed a temporary flow solution for the construction on Oak Street. It's just for a few weeks. Your property's so convenient." I told her she had no legal right to use my land as a road. Her smile stretched wider as she tapped her tablet. Actually, it's next to the community boundary, so it's technically a soft access zone if the board approves. I asked her to show me this soft access zone in any law or contract. She said she'd gladly do so next month's meeting, after the Oak Street repaving was done. I went home thinking maybe I should cool off, maybe just build a gate. But the next morning, I saw HOA contractors had already installed a temporary gate, yanking out one of my shrubs, dumping cheap gravel across my yard, and setting up traffic cones with reflective tape. They even added a painted sign, "Exit only, please drive slow on my land." That night, I called my cousin Greg. He's a lawyer, not the polished, courtroom type, but the barefoot at the barbecue, law books in the garage kind. He's a beast with property law, though. I told him everything, and he said, "Take pictures, document it all. Don't touch their gate yet, let them think they're in control." I asked what to do next. He grinned over the phone. "Let them drive. We'll make them pay for every foot." The next day, it got worse. I was sipping coffee on the porch when a convoy of 7 SUVs rolled through my driveway, like it was a freeway exit. One honked because my trash bin was in the way. Another driver waved at me like I was a doorman. The breaking point came when a mom in a minivan stopped to ask if I'd move my mailbox so she could turn more easily. That evening, I caught my neighbor Tom lurking near the hedges. Tom's a solid guy, volunteers for HOA cleanups, but ditches board meetings to fish. He looked guilty as sin. I asked what was up, and he whispered, "Look, I didn't want to say anything, but Linda's pushing to make this permanent. She's getting the HOA to petition the county to call your driveway an easement and unofficial emergency route. She's trying to add it to the neighborhood map." I stared, dumbfounded. He scratched his neck and added, "She's got 2 signatures already, just needs 3 more. That night, I stood by the driveway with a beer in hand, my dog Buddy beside me, realizing they were trying to steal my land, not figuratively, but literally. I'd paid for this plot, this driveway, and now Linda and her crew were annexing it with signs, forged approvals, and cones. But they'd miscalculated. They thought I'd roll over. What they didn't know was that I used to design mechanical deterrents for logistics hubs. Think steel spikes, tire shredders, remote gates to keep forklifts out of restricted zones. I smirked, took a swig, and muttered to Buddy, "Time to play hardball." Because if Linda wanted my driveway as a road, she'd learn how hostile roads can be. Before I could strike back, the HOA upped the ante. The next morning, Buddy started barking like crazy while I was brushing my teeth. I glanced out the bathroom window and nearly gagged on toothpaste. For guys in neon vests labeled Community Grounds Crew were in my backyard, sawing through the fence between my property and the greenbelt, not trimming, not fixing, sawing with power tools. I threw on sweats, ran out barefoot, and yelled something between a battle cry and a demand for answers. One waved casually and said, "Linda approved this. We're making alternate access from the park trail for flow." Flow again. What was this? A meditation retreat. This was my yard. I asked if they had a permit. He shrugged. "Don't need one. It's community-adjacent land." I pointed to my fence, clearly on my deed. He said, "Talk to Linda." Then they left, Leah vying a 5-foot gap like a freeway ramp for SUVs. I'd had it. I called the cops to report trespassing and property damage. The officer was nice, but wary when I mentioned the HOA. He sighed and asked if I had proof of ownership. I said I had the deed, plat map, and satellite pics if he wanted them framed. He laughed, but called it a civil matter unless I could prove criminal intent. I asked if cutting down a fence with power tools was an intent. He said, "That's up for debate." So that night, I crashed the HOA's emergency town hall meeting about community access optimization. It was in the clubhousey, a fancy trailer with folding chairs and stale cookies. I walked in with a poster of my property lines and a USB of security footage. Linda sat at the head table like a smug monarch, peering over her glasses. "Oh, you're here, great. We were just talking about you." Never a good sign. I introduced myself, raised concerns about unauthorized construction and traffic on my land, and asked who okayed the fence breach. Linda tapped her tablet, feigning worry. "A miscommunication. The crew thought it was Greenbelt. We'll check the boundaries later." I said I had the boundaries right there and could project the assessor's map. She declined, then pivoted. "But your driveway's a key exit now. Remo vying access during construction would be reckless safety first." I asked whose safety, since Buddy nearly got flattened by a Jeep merging into my yard. A few neighbors snickered. Linda didn't. Then she dropped her bombshell, a PowerPoint slide titled Temporary Easement Proposal, Parcel 82C, my parcel in Comic Sans, outlining plans to designate my driveway as an emergency lane under HOA control. I raised my hand. She ignored me. I shouted that Parcel 82C was private, requiring county approval and consent. She sighed. "We'll let the board vote." The board, 5 strangers who'd either never met me or once fined me for early recycling, voted 3-2 in favor. Linda beamed. "Proposal passed. It's non-binding for now, but it gives us flexibility." I wanted to flip a table. As I left, Greg Calladi'd watched the live stream. Linda insisted on transparency. He said she'd messed up big by putting a false proposal on record. If you catch her admitting she knew it was fake, we've got gold. At home, I found a letter taped to my garage from Linda. "Dear homeowner, we're thrilled to launch the pilot phase of community flow routing. Please clear obstructions from the driveway for smooth passage. Thank you for building a better tomorrow." With a smiley sticker. I sat on the porch with Buddy, watching another car nearly hit my hose, marveling at how my driveway went from private haven to public highway in days, all thanks to Linda's tablet vying progress. She thought I was still on defense. She didn't know I'd already sent a cease and desist through Greg, filed an injunction with the city, and requested a zoning clarification from the county. I'd also set up trail cams recording every car's plate and timestamp. Best of all, I'd started designing my masterpiece. Back in my logistics days, I worked on motorized spike strips for theft-prone loading zone, steel spikes raised or lowered remotely, controlled by sensors or voice. Illegal on public roads, but fair game on private land. The parts were ordered: industrial gravel, retractable spikes, a solar panel. I'd make my driveway the detour from hell. Let them flow. Revenge was therapeutic when it was legal and precise, especially with power tools and steel. I stayed up sketching like a mad inventor, dubbing it Operation Gravel Titan. The plan was elegant: turn my smooth driveway into a car-hating gauntlet. I ordered jagged, industrial gravelogging trail stuff, not decorative pebbles, and had it dumped mid-driveway. The delivery guy hesitated. "You sure? Looks like you use this." I grinned. "Not anymore." Then came the spike system, a retooled design from an old freight project. I built a motorized strip under a gravel-covered plate, controlled by a Bluetooth remote. I tested it, spikes up, tires popped in seconds, spikes down, I rolled through fine. By noon, the gravel made the drive a rattling nightmare, and the spikes lay in wait. I added a sign. Private property, no through traffic, proceed at your own risk. They'd ignored signs before, and within 20 minutes, Linda rolled up in a white Mercedes SUV, 3 cars trailing her. She didn't notice the graveler didn't care, coasting toward the spike zone. I clicked my remote. Spikes hissed up, and her tires crunched and deflated. Her SUV limped to a stop, rims grinding. She stepped out in heels, gaping at her tires, then spotted me with Buddy. You sabotaged the road, she yelled. Driveway, I said coolly. Private driveway. Spikes are for Yunin Vy TED guests. She fumed. You'll hear from the HOA. I replied, you'll hear from my lawyer. The next day, an HOA letter demanded I remove dangerous installations for endangering residents. I sent back Greg's letterhead, citing trespassing, property damage, and camera proof. Linda ignored my sign. At the next emergency meeting, Linda waved photos of her flat tires, calling me a menace and demanding fines for sabotaging shared infrastructure. Greg stood, handing out deed copies. What shared infrastructure? He owns every inch. Your vote was based on lies. He showed Linda's memo pro-vying intent. Silence fell. One board member asked, are we liable? Greg grinned. Oh yeah. Linda stormed out, heels clicking. Traffic stopped that night. Peace returned, but I knew she wasn't done. 2 days later, a county inspector VY cited after an HOA complaint about military-grade deterrence. I showed him my deed, maps, and footage. He inspected the spikes, whistled, not bad, and said I was clear private land, legal setup, signage included. He smirked. I've dealt with Linda before. She tried rezoning a neighbor's lot for a gazebo without permission. We fined them. He'd file a report nailing the HOA for zoning violations. That night, I caught footage of HOA workers led by Linda's nephew Tim tampering with my gate at midnight. Greg lit up. Trespassing, attempted entry gold. We'd show it at the next meeting. Months back, I'd quietly bought a neglected triangle of land behind my fence, part of Linda's flow plan, at a county auction. Now I owned it, cutting off her shortcut. At the meeting, Greg played the footage. Gasps rippled through. I handed Linda the triangle's deed. Your shortcut's closed. Her face froze. A board member moved to re-VYEW her actions. It passed unanimously. Linda resigned the next day via a bitter email. The HOA apologized, and I threw a shortcut closed barbecue. Neighbors came. John the inspector grabbed a hot dog, and a plaque went up. Private property. Violators will be spiked. Peace settled in. Linda's ordinance failed under county scrutiny, and her reign ended in a chaotic meeting where John shut her down. The HOA audited her moves, and I sat on my porch with Buddy, gravel glinting, knowing some battles are won with steel, a lawyer cousin, and a patient dog. Justice, it turns out, sometimes wears steel-toed boots.